You know, I met him and for a second got excited that he wanted to work with me, and then it didn't pan out. And
what if they had that moment where they were like, "Let's get a young man up here, Danny," and you're like, "Oh."
This is a guy he rejected. Tell us all, what was it like to be rejected by him? That would be hilarious. We wanted to have him here just to talk about the sheer and utter disappointment, the sinking feeling that he felt when he was never heard back again.
Everybody listen to Darren Carter. Yeah. We all know he's the party starter. So if you want to listen to a podcast for free, listen to a pocket party. Pocket party. They're wrong.
All right, we are recording. Here we go. Here's a little thing real quick. All right, here we go. Ready?
I like it. Oh, I thought it was going
to be And we're back. Hey, everybody. It's your host, Darren Carter, the party starter, and welcome to another episode of the Pocket Party Podcast. As you can hear, we have roosters.
Yeah.
We have people working. We have birds chirping. And we have the wonderful Danny Lobell. How are you, Danny?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, man. So great to have you hear me at your beautiful house in the neighborhood here in West LA.
I love Darren Carter, the party starter. He's such a great... I mean, I've known about that tag for many years, as long as I've known you, but I don't know if I've ever told you that I liked it.
Oh, thank you.
What about... Have you ever had a character come and challenge, like Carl Fender, the party ender, or something? You know, like like it comes to the show, like, oh, it's my arch nemesis, Carl Fender, the party ender.
It's funny, Joe. Jimmy Brogan sometimes calls himself that. Like if we're on
the party ender.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the party ender. You know.
Yeah. Well.
So yeah, people have thought of that.
But the name would have to rhyme.
Yes,
you know?
That's the thing. It
Darren
doesn't really.
Carter, party starter. Yeah. Carl Fender, the party ender. You know?
I used to do a joke where I was like, man, I my real name is Tanner. I was almost Darren Tanner, the event planner. But that's not even true though. So it's like, yeah. And it's funny. I just embrace it. I'm like, it rhymes. It used to be just like a little bit, that I would do. And then I dropped it.
And it's catchy, though.
But then I'm like, you half this business, you want people to remember you and your name, and how are they gonna,
I like it.
Every now and then I would get in my head and be like, I wonder what would I? Because I was at Lake Tahoe, and there was a guy called, I think his name was like Artie, the one man party, and he had like a keyboard, and he was all he looked real cheesy, and I was like, oh, is that what I look like to other people? But
no, but I like you don't look like that, but I mean, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm imagining what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I like the party starter. And it's interesting also because it doesn't imply that you stay for the party.
That's true. That is true,
you just
Danny.
Start it,
move
on.
And then move on. Exactly. Like sometimes people will laugh, and I'm not even trying to make them laugh. Like I was telling a comedy club owner once, he goes, how was your New Year's? I go, oh, man, it was... they had dancing afterwards, and then they wanted me to do this thing at the end. I go, I just wanted to go home, but I had to stick around. So I went up to the very top floor of the venue, and I found a tiny bathroom, and I just went in there and started playing like online chess. And he goes, some party starter you are. I'm like, well, that's true. I start the parties. I don't necessarily attend them.
Right.
So
you're like Gatsby.
Yeah.
Like the great Gatsby would throw a party, but then he would watch it from the window and not attend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's like, especially I was thinking like the things that, I guess it depends on what people consider party. Like, like younger people, they might think it's like, drugs or alcohol, but I'm like, not in any of that. So I really enjoy,
That's another one who had a tag, the great Gatsby. It wasn't just Gatsby. When you talk about him, you have to add the great.
The great party starter. Well, I have to let other people do that. I can't. That's really, I could not run into like, hi guys, I'm Darren Carter, the great party starter.
The great party starter.
Yeah.
Not just any party. These are great parties.
They'd have to really, man, expectations would be so high. Oh yeah, we're figuring out where to plug in, and
I think this is better for me.
Yeah, this is good, right?
Yeah,
like
now I don't have to.
We're back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have so many options at your house here. It's let me ask you, the noises.
Heckled.
Yeah, it's funny because my nickname before the party started was Rooster.
Rooster, yeah, so, I remembered that. That's what I was saying.
So it's great to have these roosters back here, and I thought it was going to be the neighbors. Then I'm like, no, you're the neighbor with the roosters.
So my life repeats. I had a rooster situation in Brooklyn years ago, and I actually wound up there's a whole story behind it that I wound up doing on This American Life about getting rid of that rooster. And so life repeats, and now here we are about 11 years after that, and I bought these chickens as a present because I'm like, like an old Bukharian man or something. I bought these chickens for my wife as a wedding present, 4 chickens. Here, I bring you chickens for betroth me. And
how long ago was that wedding? That was a while
about
ago.
8 years ago.
So you've had chickens for 8 years?
So this crop of chickens. So I didn't have chickens in California before that. I had them in New York, but my wife and I really liked having chickens, so I thought, it'd be a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Show up the day before the wedding or 2 days before with some chickens, and here we're starting a family, we're starting a life. So I brought these 4 chickens, and 3 of them have since passed, but one of them is still with us. My wife named them all. The one we still have is Bowie, because she's got these bell-bottom type of feathers, and she thought it'd be a good name. So we still have Bowie, and she's all alone, and I thought, that's depressing for her. I'll go get another chicken to keep her company. So I went and I bought a chick because I thought, you get more for your money if you buy them young.
Oh.
You get more years out of them.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, boy.
So I bought a chick, and it grew up into a rooster. And that's that white one right there.
Oh, wow. So did you know it was going to be a rooster?
No, I thought it was a chicken. So
Oh, wow.
it grew. And they don't guarantee the gender of the chicks. They can't really tell.
That's a rooster, that one that's standing up there with the red hair, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
with
what...
white hair, yeah.
and then the top one, the way up...
the top one's also a rooster. So
Wow.
then Bowie, had babies, 8 years old.
Wow.
She's an old mom, and she had these 2 babies, 3 actually. One died very young, but we were left with 2, and one's a chicken and one's another rooster. So now I got these 2 roosters again, and I'm back to square one where I was 11 years ago in Brooklyn trying to get rid of roosters because you get noise complaints.
So break it down. How many roosters, how many chickens right now?
So then I have another coop of chickens that are not from the wedding. That's another story. But I have, from the wedding, I still have 1 chicken. And then I have the rooster that I bought thinking it was a chicken. And then they had 2 babies, which is another chicken and a rooster. And then the other coop is 3 other chickens that are not related to the story.
Wow.
Yeah, I think those are...
I think hopefully after this podcast, we'll do a little vlog. You could show. We'll make a little video, a little short video. We'll show the people the roosters, the chickens.
Sure, and if anyone wants to adopt these 2 roosters, they're beautiful, silky roosters. That's the kind of chicken the breed that they are.
Yeah.
And you just have to promise not to eat them.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you that. That was my next question.
Yeah.
Do you are these strictly pets?
These are pet chickens.
Yeah. Okay. They're not.
They're not food chickens.
When you say they die, you're not like, well,
No.
Yeah.
The kids got hungry. And
Exactly.
came in with that.
Because then kids came.
I mean,
along.
but there's nothing wrong with doing that either. These are not dedicated to that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not. My wife was raised on a farm, so she's a lot.
Yeah.
She thinks different about animals than I do.
Right.
But I could see it would be strange if you name a pet, you have it for 11 years, and then you're like,
and you have it for lunch.
Yeah, I couldn't. You know what I mean? I just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you eating?
No questions.
Right.
Do they? Do you? No. What's the Is it legal to do this? Or I don't know.
It is legal.
Oh, that's cool.
So you're legally allowed to have up to 2 roosters in this neighborhood. It's zoned for that.
Oh.
But it's causing me problems with the neighbors. I don't want to upset people.
Yeah.
I like it personally because
do
it feels
too.
natural. I like waking up to the sound of rooster, but
it's funny. I get the idea, and it's maybe that's adding to it. But this is almost like country living, Like when I come here, I see a rocking chair. There's like this cool, homey vibe. It kind of has that cozy, like country living. I know we're in LA, but this could easily be somewhere else. Like this could be in the mountains, or
For years I used to open for Ralphie May, the late great Ralphie May. And he used to say, to be like, Dan Lobell, you're more of a hick than I am. And I'm from Arkansas.
Yeah.
And you're a Jew from New York. I don't know how this happened.
Yeah,
but,
you're just like a set of overalls away from you got a camper, the whole thing.
Yeah,
man.
I like country living.
I do too. It's more mellow, right? It's like I like city living because I like the opportunities but then I like having my space of for me, I like Griffith Park. I like getting out there in nature. I like being away from, all the city life. But then you're at the top of the mountain, and then you see the traffic on the 5, and so like we're best of both worlds.
Yeah, we're all trying to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, where you're like not 10
literally
hours.
and figuratively,
Yeah,
I guess. I mean,
yeah.
some people are only in it for this world, but I mean, me being somebody who's a man of faith, I'm in it for the best of both worlds. I'm trying to get the best of this world, and if there's another world, which I believe there is,
Me too.
I'll get the best of that world.
Yeah.
So best of both worlds. I guess that's where it came from, right?
I think so. The best of both worlds. It was interesting, even driving here. I didn't take a freeway, so the GPS had me go through. And it's interesting when you go to someone's house the first time, you have an idea in your mind. Like I looked it up, and I'm not going to say where it's at exactly, but I looked it up, and I'm like, okay, I could take the freeway, but then this other way, and it was really cool, man. You start coming through like all these mansions and stuff, like Hancock Park area.
Right.
And I'm like, oh wow, this is and then it looked and it said oh, I still have a ways to go. and then you go through another part where there was
Yeah.
and then but it was just interesting seeing the different things that go through your mind. You know what I mean? Like I already saw when you gave me the address, somehow there was like a view of this is. And I'm like, okay, I see where I'm going.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting that, and then to come here and have the country lifestyle still like
So
I want to ask you something. We'll get to you have a movie coming out,
right?
I'll put it in the credits. I'd love to hear about that. I want to ask you about I love your Jewish faith. I love how and I was raised Christian. I am Christian, but I find there's a lot of similarities. And I love it. Like when I hear you, it's not like this foreign thing where I'm like, oh, I don't even get that concept. I love how you, I'm going to countrify things, but like you wind things down on Friday night and then on Saturday, like.
Fire them back up again.
Fire them back up again. We're taking phone calls, honey. But I love the commitment of, it's, we're going to slow, we're going to, I guess, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but like not using electricity.
Right.
Observing the Sabbath.
Right.
So,
as we call it, Shomer Shabbat. Meaning, Shomer in Hebrew really means a guard, like a guard over. So you're kind of guarding over Shabbat, protecting Shabbat, making sure that it continues to exist. Yeah. Because if you don't do it and you don't protect it, you lose it.
It's a tradition that could just kind of go away, and then
So I'm a Shabbat guardian.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Shabbat.
I like that. Guardians of the Shabbat. I like
Coming
that.
soon.
Yeah. Coming soon. But not. And then you could do a joke, but not till sun up or so. I don't know. Like
it was very hard for me, because I had to give up weekends at comedy clubs.
Yeah, I was gonna say because it wasn't like you started from since you were had a rooster. No,
right.
you start. So didn't you like maybe went more secular? I guess I would say and then you.
Yeah,
as you got older, you're like, okay, I'm gonna start observing and guarding the Shabbat again.
It's like a long story, but a short version of it is I became very anti-religious in my 20s. And the more you kind of become anti-religious, the more you become anti-religious. Does that make sense? The more you become anti-religious, the more you become more anti-religious.
Oh.
So in the same way that I think a lot of people, the more they become religious, the more they become more religious,
That's true.
Because you commit to things.
Yeah.
So if you're like anti-religious, you start out just mildly anti-religious, but over time, if you're committed, you try to build on things. So I became more and more anti-religious. And I was like, I don't want to go anywhere near religious Judaism. I don't want to date any Jewish girls because they might bring me back into it. So I'm done with being part of the Jewish people. I was like, I was really, really angry at it all. So anyway, my girlfriend who moved in with me, long story short, decides she wants to convert to Judaism. And I was like fighting her on it very hard.
Yeah.
And like, this is exactly what I didn't want to get into. So
that's hilarious. Yeah.
But God had other plans. So basically, years of the process of converting, I kind of wound up converting along with her. And I was able to see it through new eyes and see the beauty in it. And it was very good for my inner peace because, when you're angry at something, you're angry. you know, inside.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm saying things that are not profound, and they almost sound very stupid. You know, the more you do it, the more you do it. If you're angry, you're angry. But
No, I get it. It's like,
but if you're angry at something, you're holding on to anger, which is, you know, obvious. But just think about it, folks. So you don't want to have anger in your heart or feel that way about anything. I think. I mean, so inner peace is one of the best things you can have. But it took a lot of inner turmoil to get to it. And in the process of my wife becoming Jewish, I became much more Jewish, and I had to decide. I just started headlining clubs, and my career had really started picking up, and it was very hard for me to give that up because it was income, and it was also not just income. You know how hard we worked to get to that point.
Yeah.
So it was very, very hard for me, and it's still not bounced back to where it was career-wise, but I've been creative in trying to find ways around it and to maintain, you know, my comedy passions and creative passions and stuff like that. So
I was going to ask you, like, I mean, is it made it difficult? Like, let's say you get booked somewhere. Like, do you have to, or maybe things just happen where you're like, you know what? Okay, I just got to put that out of my mind. I'm going to be doing a club from Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Be like, I'm going to get a fan base, do my thing. I'll come in on a Tuesday. Is that how it?
Right, yeah. So I won't do the Friday nights. I just won't do them. So, you know, if I get offered them, I turn them down.
But you
now
can
I don't
still
get offered much anymore because...
Would you do, like, let's say, you know, come to Phoenix and do this comedy club, and you'd be like, okay, I'll do Thursday and I'll do Saturday, and then Friday...
Or, I mean, whenever I can make that happen, great. But most of the time people don't want to find someone just for a Friday night, and they don't want to lose the weekend. So, but, you know, anytime I can, like, I just did a week of shows in Aruba, and the fellow who runs it's a wonderful guy, and I said to him, you know, he said, come out to Aruba. I said, well, I won't perform Friday night. I don't want to mess you up, you know.
Yeah.
So he said, let me see if I have a time when I'm doing shows on the weeknights, and I'll let you know. And he got back to me. He says, yeah, I actually have one where it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the shows, and there's no shows that weekend. And it turned out to be my birthday week. So I got to go to Aruba for my birthday and perform, and that was fantastic,
nice.
you know. And I thought, you know, look, you know, I have my rules, and I stick to them.
Yeah.
The only hard part about Shabbat for me at this point still is the missing doing weekends of stand-up. That's
But you
and
can
it's not like I missed the weekend. I missed the amount of stand-up I was doing, but I love Shabbat.
I was wondering about this too, because Saturday night, like, so you could do Saturday, but then I think the sun has to go down. What happens if the show, it's like, it's starting at 7 and the sun's out a little, or I don't know how that works.
I won't do it.
Really? You just,
it has to be after.
Like, completely, like, okay.
Yeah, either things are, to me, you know, like there are people, certainly there are comedians who are observant Jews that will find workarounds like this. I'm not like that, though, because if I'm in it, I'm in it, you know?
You don't want to.
So I don't like to, you know, if something's sacred, it's sacred. It's not half sacred. It's fully sacred, you know? Like, I don't like to compromise values. So I won't do that. But I mean, there are some people who say, look, I'm holding on to my values and I can make these compromises. Great, that's good for them. But that's not me. That's just not how I operate. I'm a very all or nothing kind of fella. So
I got one more question. I know I sound like a guy that's like new. It's like my first day.
No.
Let's say if I converted, I'm like, well, what about? I was wondering about like the time change. Is it like when it gets dark earlier? Is it like, oh, this is good because then I can go do a show, or like in the summer when it gets dark at like 8:30?
Yeah.
Like, does that come into play?
It does for sure. Yeah, definitely. So when it gets dark earlier on Saturday nights, I could do it. Also, I did an Edinburgh Fringe show, and it got late. It got dark so late in Scotland on Friday nights that I was able to do my Friday night shows. Because you know, I just couldn't do Saturday night shows.
Yeah.
But you know, I would go late Saturday night and do other people's guest spots and stuff.
I think I really admire that. It's like I listened to the podcast you do with Elon Gold, and Elon. Remember, he said that he would sometimes, you know, he does a lot of television work, and he would tell people, here's what my situation, and a lot of times they were cool with it. But remember, he said that there was one time that It was. Was it Bones? I think so.
I think it was Bones.
It was like
yeah.
his 4th time, and he was like, and the guy was.
He said, "Sorry, can't."
Yeah, and I loved it. Elon was like, you know what? It's not worth it for me. Like just this, this.
Yeah, that was on the the most recent Modern Day Philosophers podcast that I did. It was with Elon Gold. Really interesting, funny guy. Yeah,
that's another great podcast. You guys check out his he's got a couple of them, and Modern Day Philosophers.
Yeah,
I remember once you asked me to be on it, and I was like, I don't know anything about nerd.
Well,
and then,
I hope you'll still do it.
I will. It's funny because every episode I've listened to, it sounds like that's what the guests usually say too.
Everybody
like philosopher. I'm no philosopher, and you're like, no, don't worry about that. Like
sometimes they'll like really get like up in arms about it. That's fun too. Why are you bringing this philosophy? Well, this is the show.
Yeah, and George Wallace made me laugh because he was like, "Man, there you go again. Can we just get out of here?" But he made it comedic.
Yeah.
You're like, well, then the philosopher said. You're like, I don't give a damn about the. Can he speak clear English so we could? You know?
That's right. Yeah.
That was great, but
So I did one with this guy Ray Allen, who's a friend of mine, comedian, when we were in Aruba, and the philosopher was. Well, I won't give it away, but it was a black philosopher, and it was like very militantly black philosophy. And he's like, why did you pick this out for me? And he got so upset. He's like, a white Jewish guy, and you bring me this. I'm going to get in trouble commenting on it.
Is Ray Allen white or black?
Yeah, white Jewish
he's
guy.
White.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And he's like, well, what is this? You're going to get me canceled with this philosophy. And I don't pick them. Alex Fasella has always picked them. And I don't even know who it's going to be until I sit down with the person because I don't like to look at it.
Oh, yeah, because I like that about it, where you're reading it for the first time. And
I don't want to come in, with punchlines and the other person doesn't have any, that's not fair. Or even thought punchlines, you know?
Yeah.
So, I think it's only fair that we both discover it at the same time. We both discovered at the same time that this is somebody who's going to be, it's going to have to be done with some finesse. And he thought I was like ambushing him with it, and I'm like, look, I don't even pick them. I don't.
Yeah.
But I think we did a good job.
Modern day ways to get canceled.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he couldn't even read the quotes.
He's like,
I don't think we should say that word, or whatever. Yeah.
That's funny.
So, whatever. But I said, look, there's relatability in everything.
Yeah.
And you just take these ideas as they relate to black people, relate them to how you feel as a Jewish person, or whoever you are. These are all ideas are universal, and we can all find empathy in everybody else's situations, and even if you don't agree with somebody's philosophy, you can usually understand how they got there, or at least try to understand how they got there. It's interesting,
I was reading that, and I've heard people mention this to you before, that Mark Maron credits you as the original podcaster.
Well, what happened is he used to come on my podcast. I had the first, if not the first, then one of the very first ever comedy podcasts that interviewed comedians. And we started in 2004. Because I used to say the first, and then someone in Canada wrote me an email and said, I had one. I don't know who the guy was or anything. But then I thought, well, just because I've never heard of him, I can't dismiss him. Maybe he did start a week before me or something,
Yeah.
So I don't care. It doesn't even matter to me who's the first.
You were one of the first comedy podcasts.
One of the first.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, Mark used to come on my podcast. And then I remember we were at Comics. COMIX was a club in the meatpacking district. And we're sitting at the bar, and he's like, I feel like I should start a podcast, man. And I'm like, well, do it. And he's like, can you help me? Do you want to do it with me? Do you want to be my co-host? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that, because I didn't want to, I was trying to focus on mine, and I love Mark, but I also don't think that Mark and I would work very well together, because it would have to be very much his way, and I would get frustrated.
Yeah.
And I think I'm right about that. I also don't think it would have become WTF. It would have been maybe a predecessor, and then we would have done something, because people say, you could have been WTF, man. I think it would have been something that we did for a little while, and then our friendship fell apart, and then he did WTF.
Right.
So I don't think that would have been good. But I told him, this is what you should do, and this is the equipment at the time I think you should get, and he asked me one or two follow-up times, and he also talked to other people as well. But, so I helped him along with getting it going.
When you started put that a little bit closer, by the way. So you see my setup, right? I got the camera there, the PodTrack P4.
I like the P4. It's the P4 is an amazing little. Zoom makes it, and it's a fantastic little recorder. I have one too.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
it's great, right? I think I bought it for like $199 or something.
Cheap, and it's got like it used to be like thousands of dollars to do what this thing does. You couldn't have something so portable, and you could put a Bluetooth adapter and patch in your cell phone. Do you know about that?
Yeah, I do that. I usually do it right here.
It's unreal. This whole thing is just. It's an incredible
when you started, were you mobile when you started, or they had to come to you when you started podcasting?
So when I started in my college radio station. I was already doing a college radio show.
What's up, guys? How you like the show so far? Pretty good, right? Kind of weird that I'm out here in the country with the chair next to me, but anyways, if you like the show and you want to help out, go to Cameo. I do birthday shout-outs, anniversary shout-outs, or if you just want to do a donation, go to DarrenCarter.com, PayPal, or Venmo at Darren Carter Comic. Now let's get back to the show.
And I was roommates with a guy who was a subscriber to Wired magazine, and there was an article about this new thing called podcasting, and I was looking at his magazine, and I said, could we do this with my college radio show? Could we make it a podcast? And like nobody knew what a podcast was or how to make a podcast. And he said, I think I could look into how to make a podcast, and we could do it, but I have to be on the show.
Yeah.
You have to put me on the show. And I thought, well, is that even worth it? Like, what's a podcast?
Yeah.
And I thought, all right, let me try him on the show anyway. Maybe it would be good. We didn't really vibe on the air. It wasn't good, but he did get initially the podcast. Back then, you had to write code to make a podcast.
Wow.
So you couldn't. There wasn't just like a thing you submit your podcast, and you had to had to know about nerdy stuff. So he helped me get it going, and then someone else took over. But that's how we wound up with one of the first ever podcasts, period. But probably the first comedy podcast to interview comedians for sure. I would think, except maybe that guy in Canada who emailed me.
Yeah. Back then, did they even have iTunes charts, and were you on them?
No, there was no iTunes charts.
None of that stuff.
No, there wasn't any podcasts. And when people would come in and I'd say it's a podcast, and they said, what's a podcast? And my other co-host, Chris Iacono, who wound up taking over the tech side of stuff, who's really funny. He doesn't do comedy anymore, but it's a shame. He was really funny, Italian guy from Brooklyn. And I just remember, like, he's such a juxtaposition of, he's like this Brooklyn guy, who used to work in a deli and slice provolone, but he's also this like crunchy granola guy who moved to Colorado and likes hiking, and he's also this tech nerd.
Yeah.
So like you don't usually find a guy who looks like a Sopranos cast member, talks like a Sopranos cast member, and also can write code. So that was part of what made him so fascinating, and so people would say, what's a podcast? You go, bro, I'll tell you, it's content is aggregated through these different channels, and basically when you have an RSS feed, and then people would be like, what? And I just go, Chris, forget it. It's just a college radio show on the internet, Just forget it.
Yeah.
I remember Alonzo Bowden came in, and he was just like, this is incredible. Like, this is going to be the future and everything. And I didn't even think it would be the future. I just thought it was another way to get out the show.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Because Alonzo, he's like, and this is revolutionary. Like, he said, the way you guys are doing radio, it's like just conversational. It's not, he said, I've done so much morning radio. It's never like this. It's very real. It's very loose. It's like, and Janine Garofalo also, when she came in and did it, she was like, this is different. This is like jazz, and I remember these things stuck with me, and I'm like, maybe we're onto something,
Yeah, definitely compared to like that morning radio show where you fly into a town and you got to be funny to sell those tickets. And so Darren, so you met Snoop Dogg, and you're just like, wow, ooh, and you're just trying to like grab those people as they're turning the dial.
Right.
And, come see me tonight at Chuckles. And then this is a lot more like.
And then if you start talking real, then people go, I don't know, that doesn't sound funny, that guy.
Right. And then the DJs get all nervous. Yeah. And just like.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's what people were used to until that, I mean, so when we started doing it, and it was college radio, so I could sort of make it what I wanted it to be, and no one was telling me what it had to be, and I had a little seniority at the radio station there at that point, and I'd actually helped them build the studio, so nobody even at the college, was telling me how to run my show, which was good.
After college, how did you keep your podcast going?
So I kept the studio going. I just kept like one credit hovering for a long time just to keep the studio. And then even when I graduated, I worked out a deal to keep the studio. So I was in that studio for like 7 years.
Wow. I get it though.
It was the only thing that was of value about college to me. I don't remember anything from college except
that would suck. Like my podcast is way over there. I gotta
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, college was, I thought, a big waste of time, and I was going to drop out of college. I was ready to drop out, and there used to be a website called Laugh.com where you could order interviews with comedians that come on CDs.
Oh yeah, I think I was on that.
On Laugh.com?
I think I did, or they interviewed me. But Bob Fisher from the Ice House, did he have anything to do with it?
Could be.
Maybe.
This is
Or maybe
like
not, I don't know.
You couldn't find interviews with comedians. This is like 2002, 2001. Where were you going to find? You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have. The internet wasn't what it is, and I wanted to hear like what Jerry Lewis thinks, what Johnny Carson thinks, what Jerry Seinfeld thinks. So I bought these Laugh.com interview CDs.
Yeah.
And they were like real like in-depth interviews with these great comedians. So I'm like ready to drop out of college. I'm going to drop out on Monday. I've told my family. They're upset. But I said, look, I just want to do comedy. I don't want to continue with college, and I think it's a big waste of my time and money. And I'm done. And over that weekend, I popped in this Jerry Seinfeld Laugh.com interview, and they asked him, when did you know you wanted to be a comedian? Very young. You went to Queens College, yes. Why did you go to college if you knew you wanted to do comedy? You were already doing comedy. Why would you not just focus on pursuing that? Why? It was a good question, right?
Yeah,
so why? Yeah. And it was very, like, it was speaking to me directly in that moment. So I thought, why would you stay in college? And Seinfeld said, I was thinking that as well. And I'm like, I thought about dropping out of college because I knew I just wanted to do stand-up. And he said, but I thought what was more important was to see things through. And I didn't want to set a precedent for myself in life where I don't see things through. And I knew if I dropped out of college, that would change, his own constitution.
Yeah.
So he said, I think even though I knew I wasn't going to do anything with the degree, I saw it through, got the degree, threw it out or whatever. I don't know what he did, put it in a drawer, and then, proceeded to just pursue comedy. And I thought, he's got a good point. So I'll finish college too. And that's the only reason I finished college was because of that interview at that exact moment.
He's so good at those interviews. Talk about a modern day philosopher.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on the podcast, but it doesn't seem likely. But you never know.
That'd be great. You had George Wallace, and they're good friends.
I met
You're
Seinfeld.
Very Jerry Seinfeld adjacent, I bet, right?
I know a lot of people that know him. I met him recently. Mark Schiff, of course. See, I wouldn't want to ask Mark to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody's asked Mark to get to Seinfeld for so much of his life.
Yeah.
It's not nice. So, but I did meet Seinfeld at George Shapiro was his manager, passed away. He was almost my manager for a minute. Didn't happen, unfortunately, but I was invited to his memorial service at Paramount Studios. It was a really wild thing that I was even invited.
Yeah.
And tell you who was there: Mel Brooks, Dick Van Dyke, Rob Reiner, Sarah Silverman, Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld.
Wow.
This is the crowd that was there, and for some reason I was there with Kylie. This is not long ago, like a year ago. And I said, what the hell am I doing here? This must have been a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And it probably was a mistake. I think it was a clerical error that I was even invited. But I walked around very displaced after. I enjoyed everyone spoke about him, and I enjoyed it. And I thought, this is great. It's a legendary guy that I don't really know. You know, I met him and for a second got excited that he wanted to work with me, and then it didn't pan out. And
what if they had that moment where they were like, "Let's get a young man up here, Danny," and you're like,
"This is a guy he rejected." Let's tell us all what was it like to be rejected by him. That would be hilarious. We wanted to have him here just to talk about the sheer and utter disappointment, the sinking feeling that he felt when he was never heard back again. Just tell us about that. That really shines a light on how important he was to know how horrible you felt that he didn't want anything to do with you. But anyway, so I was there and I met Seinfeld afterwards, and I told him, how much he means to me, and he seemed like he couldn't have cared less, which is probably what you'd expect. Yeah. And then I said, "Hey, I'd love to get a photograph with you." Yeah. And he goes, "No, thanks. No, thanks." Yeah. So that was it. That was it wasn't like Mark said, in fairness, he said George Shapiro was like a father to him, he said even though he doesn't show a lot of emotion, he was really hurting that night. So and I didn't catch it and I should have intellectually, but he put on such a good face when he got up and spoke, and he acted like he was totally. He said, "I'm cool with everything. He lived a great life. I'm glad." And it seemed like I took him at very face value, but Mark, who knows him very well, said, "No, he doesn't show his emotions, but he was very emotional that night." And he said, "I don't think he would have been like that with you under different circumstances." And I believe, Mark is pretty astute fella. So and he knows him. So
and it's tough that when they say like never meet your heroes, but sometimes it's I was at the Improv one night and they were like, this is when Bud was alive, and they were like, "Bud's coming, you can't stand in the aisle," and I was right by the sound booth, and so I looked back and there was an empty chair, and I there was a person sitting behind the empty chair, and I said, "Excuse me, is anybody sitting here?" And then the person that was behind it looked up at me, and it was Jerry, and he goes, "No." And I said, "Oh, do you mind if I sit here?" And he goes, "Go ahead." And I sat down, and then he picked up the chair and moved back about 8 feet, because he was watching a comedian. And then that night it kind of hurt because I was like, "Oh man, I wasn't gonna bug him," but then I realized like, "Oh yeah, he might think here comes a guy that's gonna want to talk to me and ask questions, and and
probably not unusual, right? And he doesn't know you from anyone else.
Exactly. I'm just a figure in the dark that's like, is anybody sitting here? Can I sit here? And then
there were many times I could have met him, and I chose not to. Right. When Lucian Hold died, who was the manager of the Comic Strip Live club in Manhattan that I used to play, I was at Lucian's funeral, and I was sitting right behind Seinfeld. Like, the whole time, I could have tapped him on the shoulder. It was in a church, and, it was like church seating. We're very, very close. And I thought, I could say hi to Seinfeld, but I said, I don't want to it's a funeral. I wind up doing it at a memorial service, but not at a funeral. Right. But I said,
I draw my line.
So I said, okay.
Maybe a wedding. Maybe you'll get that photo at a wedding,
Another time I was at the Comedy Cellar, and there was Seinfeld sitting at the table with Tom Papa. And I walked by, and Tom Papa said hello to me. And I thought I could take this opportunity to parlay the hello with Tom Papa into hello. Nice to meet you, Jerry Seinfeld. But I thought I don't want to do that because I looked at Seinfeld and he had a look on his face like, please don't. And the look said it. So I didn't. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm getting old now, and you never know. I'd like to meet him. And then I met him, and it was, it was what I told you it was. So,
I think I'll meet him again. And even if it never have that, that interaction, like that would be really, really cool. Yeah. Where he's like, I have a 2-seat bicycle. I'm going to be in the neighborhood. Would you like the front of the, let's go for it. That's never probably going to happen, but I enjoy him in interviews. I love hearing him talk. That's the only friendship I need with him. Or,
it's on
but I would love to hear you talk to him. I mean, honestly, it's like
I'd love to hear me talk to him. But one time, many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, my brother Josh was out in L.A. I was in L.A. Neither of us lived here. We were just visiting. And there's a whole other set of stories from that visit that were pretty interesting. I wound up having a short-lived friendship with Andrew Dice Clay because of that visit. Wow. Which was a whole other story. But we decided to drive.
He's different, right? I met him like when he's not on, and he's been very nice to me. I've only met him a couple times in that kind of situation where we're in a green room and he drops and he's really cool.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't know how he really is, but he seems cool. He knows how to like be cool in that situation.
I got a good story, but it would take up probably its own podcast. So.
Okay. Can we save it? Can you?
No, I'm saying I don't want to do it now.
No, I'm saying would you come back and do the podcast again?
Sure, anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you come back? This is
my house. I come back here every day. So anyway.
Wait, let me rephrase it. Can I come back and have you on the podcast?
Yes, I love it.
All right,
love
good,
it.
good.
I'd be honored. So, so my brother and I are driving to Vegas. I don't think we'd ever been to Vegas before. We're like, this will be so exciting, and we have this rental car. We're young, and everything is so exciting. It's like I think it's our first time in LA, except when we were little kids with our parents, right? So we're driving to Vegas, and keep in mind also we're coming from New York where we never drove.
Oh.
So we're in a car. We got really excited. We're speeding along, and then we didn't know rules like you can't go over like a not broken line, to change lanes. So we get into the carpool lane without, and whether or not we knew it, I don't think we knew it, but even if we did know it, we probably still would have done it.
Yeah.
So we got into that lane, and then whoop, whoop, you could do it better than me. There you go. Yeah.
The police pull over.
So police pull us over because we're speeding and we just went over the white line, and we didn't signal.
The double yellow line, probably.
I probably. We went into the carpool lane from the regular lane.
Yeah.
And where you're not supposed to enter. And then my brother and I decided, let's both pretend to be Seinfeld when they come over.
Really?
So we both did these Seinfeld impressions. And we go, officer!
Yeah.
I didn't know I was speeding! And my brother's going, I didn't know I was speeding either! We both,
Did the guy know you were doing an impression?
I don't know, but we got the ticket, but we're like, look, we're going to get the ticket anyway. Let's both be Seinfeld. So,
did you have
Quit speeding! I didn't know! You didn't know you were speeding! Come on!
Yeah. Yeah.
It must have been a bizarre day. You pulled over these two Seinfeld impersonators.
Oh, that's
or something.
hilarious. But you got a good laugh out of it. Some brother bonding, and made a trip. Oh, dude, I never would do that. Well, first of all, I taught traffic school for a little bit when I moved to LA. Yeah. So and I used to have a roommate that went to the police academy. He never made it, but he was telling me when you get pulled over, you got to put your hands on 10 and 2 and turn the dome light on and just roll all the windows down. And so I usually put on like some old soft music to make the cop feel very relaxed. Like I remember one time I put on like, "Oh, give me a home where the buffalo." So I'm just I'm just looking. Like I'm not joking.
That's probably what the serial killers play.
Exactly.
Also.
I know. And I'm like, "Hello, how are you?" And just real. But I wouldn't. What's the deal?
We got a real psychopath here.
Exactly.
He's playing Home on the Range. I'm getting it back up.
On the range. Yeah.
So I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
you.
that's it. That was it. I was just. And my son's going through traffic. He's going through. He's 15 and a half, so he just got his written. He passed the written test. I don't know why the camera's that way. I keep turning. We're slowly but surely facing the hand wash sign behind us.
And that means it's time for an ad, folks. Did you know that?
Whenever you hear the rooster in the backdrop, but yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's right. When you're on go to iTunes, give us some ratings, 5 stars. If you're on YouTube, thumbs up and comment. Okay, and by the way, so my son, he passed the written test. So now we're doing my wife ordered the magnetic student drivers, all over the door and the bumper and stuff. So we're going through that driving, like, don't cross this line and watch out for that and go slow. And we're more like on the cautious side. Like even when you said speeding, the father in me is like, don't speed.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting to be at that stage of life with your.
It is. How many children do you have now?
I have 2, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So.
Wow, boy and a girl. Two girls. It's interesting because on some of the older episodes, you're like, one day I'll have kids, or maybe, or whatever you said. You didn't have children at the time. Yeah. And now you have 2 children, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old.
It happens fast, within 3-4 years.
Yeah, it's great. You see them grow, and I love all the stuff. Like inside, you had like the little giraffes and the. Yeah. I love that. Every stage is great for the kids.
I did not know that I was going to love it so much being a father, but it's really one of the great surprises of my life. That this is fun because I don't know. My dad, you know, he's a great dad and everything, but I don't think he ever seemed like he was having fun with it. You know, he always seemed like, well, I'm being very kind to him in the way I'm putting this, but
Yeah.
you know, he'd always be like, "You boys are stressing me out." And, so
You
I
and your
looked-
damn Seinfeld impressions, Dad. What do you mean?
My sons are idiots, you know. So I'd look at that and be like, "Oh boy, it looks like, you know, it doesn't look fun to be a dad." I feel bad that my dad went into this, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, I know he loves us, but I mean, he certainly. Even then, he'd always be like, "It's so expensive having kids. You better be ready," and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna save myself all that headache and not do that." And then you know, having kids, I don't know. I mean, we're different, my dad and I. But you know, I certainly don't relate. I do relate that you need money, but I don't relate to the stress. Thank God, and I hope I maintain that way. But I mean, of course, there's stress about it, but I just love it. I love being a dad. I'm enjoying every second of it so far. So
I do too. I love it, man. We only have we have one son, and you know, we do these videos where we go father-son bonding, and you know, we love. That's the thing. Whenever you're into, a lot of times it's great to get your children into it too, because when they get older, they'll want to come back and, like, if you like fishing, then they're like, "Hey, Dad, can we go fishing?" Or so, you know, I got them into, like, you know, I like doing. You know, my wife, we always go hiking, and she's like, yeah, he doesn't have a choice. Like when he was really little, like that, she used to run marathons where that's what we do, you know. So
I got my girls into mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese. I think I said like Macintosh. Macintosh computers coding. Mac and cheese. I love mac and cheese. Oh my god.
Yeah, mac and cheese.
Yeah.
The rooster kind of punctuated my joke there.
He did.
You know, it was almost like the symbol. You know. And,
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if your children, you know, if they get into like podcasting and, you know, and or you know, something like this, maybe entertainment or the relaxing style. You have a lot of stuff here. This is
what if the rooster just goes off again, and then I go, "Will you knock it up?" And I start chasing it around in this Benny Hill-esque type of way, in the background of the camera. I mean, that would be good comedy. And I'm tripping all over the place, and the rooster's jumping over the microphones, and there's feathers flying everywhere. And you go, "That's our show for today, folks. Make sure to like and subscribe." Right?
Yeah. You're like, I love my daughters, but these chicken. You get all like,
I become like the dad character with you're stressing me out. My chickens are idiots.
Yeah. Like, whoa, Danny. What?
Well, he seemed like a nice guy for most of it.
Yeah, for the first half of the podcast, and he wrung those chickens' necks. And,
got the Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's literally choking the chicken, folks. And that's the end of the show.
And cue the rooster.
Yeah. Now he won't do it. Oh. He's a showbiz ham.
I didn't know. Did you make them do that? Like when I
remote.
You do have a remote. I was gonna say when I did the rooster imitation, he did it back. Is that right? Is that how that works? Or
I don't know. I don't know what goes on in his head.
I don't know.
Not that one.
I want to ask you a couple. I have so much to cover, and like I said, I'd love to do another episode with you. But okay, let's get to the movie.
Okay.
So you have a movie, documentary that you made, that you put out there, and I know you've had a showing, and you're going to do another one. Another one's coming up.
Yeah. So there's one more. You know, until there'll be another one at some point, I hope.
Yeah.
There's no other plans at this point for another showing. So this is the only one
Make sure you
currently on the books.
Oh, perfect.
So it's in Encino next Wednesday. We're recording this a week before it. I don't know when this comes out, but it'll be the 26th.
Yeah, I was going to look
of
April,
7:30 p.m. at the Laemmle Theater in Encino. It's the town center. It's called the Laemmle Town Center.
Wednesday, April 26th?
Yeah.
Wednesday, April 26th.
And the film is produced by Stand Up Records, and it's a half documentary, half stand-up special that I shot in Barcelona and Madrid and Girona in Spain. So it's like tracing my roots and my Jewish heritage, and we kind of got into the Jewish stuff a little bit, and I was curious to find out more once I started getting into it. And I went there and I did a stand-up special, and at the same time I went back to where my family, or at least some of them, originated from, and I kind of explored the emotions behind that and it was interesting, and and then I goofed around Spain, and so it's like it's funny. It's got some deeper parts to it, and it's got stand up, and I like how it turned out in the end. So I hope people will come and see it. If you're in California or a neighboring state, you can get in the car and come to Encino. I guess it's a big ask for a neighboring state, but who knows? What if you want an excuse to do something?
If you're in Oregon and you want to come down, that's a neighboring state. That's that'll be a nice 9-hour drive. But
you could jump on a flight.
It's amazing that you're having that you first of all that the film got made, and then you had this idea, you did it, and it's actually being shown in a theater. A lot of times people, they never get around to doing anything, or if they do, it ends up, on YouTube or something.
Right.
I mean, that's the fact that you
it's
got it together.
Yeah. So this will be the third theater that it showed at. It showed at a theater in Lincoln Center in New York.
Wow.
And then in Santa Monica at the Laemmle Theater there, and then it went well there, and they offered me to show it at their other theater in Encino. So I'm very excited. It's very cool seeing your film up on a movie screen. I don't know how many people ever get to do that, and I feel like really privileged that I got to do that, and I don't want to sound in any way pretentious about it, because I don't ever want to sound pretentious. It's not a good way to sound, but I like to sound pretentious, folks. I do my best to try and sound, at least part of the interview, I always like to sound a little pretentious.
These are I know he sounds like a humble guy with roosters in the background, but
anytime you talk about film, right, you really run the risk of being pretentious. The film world has really embraced it. If you use the word film, it's already a little pretentious. You go a movie, that's a little better. Yeah, the movie, the film, the movie. The flick. The flick is I made a flick.
I made a picture about
a picture. The picture is already getting into a different generation.
Yeah, your grandpa said that. Yeah, my son made a picture.
Hey, he made a nice picture there. It's a good one. He's got.
Hey, is this part in the movie? I heard you talk with Mark Schiff about it, and it really resonated with the idea. I can really visualize what happened when you were in, I want to say, Spain, and you. After you were at the temple, you guys had dinner at the rabbi's house,
right?
And you had to walk maybe 2 blocks,
right? So that wasn't in the movie because our electricity was off because it was Shabbat. But I'll tell you about it. We had to walk a few blocks from the synagogue to the rabbi's house, and they had armed guards that accompanied us on this walk because anti-Semitism is so bad in Europe. And there have been so many attacks on Jews who especially are visibly Jewish, like wearing a yarmulke, and some Jews, you can blend in, but if you look the part and you're dressed in the dress, you really are a target. And I was like, you hear about anti-Semitism here, and it exists, and every now and then, unfortunately, we hear about attacks that happen, but it's not front and center in your mind when you live in America. But in Europe and in Spain especially, it was so in my face that we had these guys with machine guns walking us a few blocks, and as we're walking, I see regular folks walking around and looking at us like we're convicts, being marched to the bus to be taken away or something. Yeah. And it was a lot of feelings came up inside of me for that. I feel, first of all, I felt like we'd done something wrong, and then all we were was just us, and then I also, and then of course they're there to protect us, so it's not even like a punishment, it's a good thing that they were there. But it was the whole thing was very jarring for me. And then I thought about Jews in history have been arrested for being Jewish. I don't like talking too much about the Holocaust because it's a mood killer. It really kills the mood. But I know. But that, in those situations, the guys with guns were not their friends, right? And they were still. It's just for being, what you were born as.
It's interesting when you said that. You're when you're, visibly oh, this person. It wasn't like. It's wow, because I think you said You just said it right now too about some people can kind of blend in or whatever, you
Right.
know. And I think one time you said you were in an Uber and this guy was going off, and you were just like,
Right.
this guy doesn't know him, you know.
Yeah. This guy was.
yeah.
He's like, Hitler was a great man, bro. This is like Mexican American. He's like, yo, Hitler was a great man, bro. Look it up. Time Magazine, Man of the Year, bro.
Yeah.
He had a lot of great things to say. He's like, he goes, you know, like the media, bro.
Yeah.
They want us to think that Hitler was like this bad guy, bro. But he was a great man. And I was like, yeah, well, I have to look at that, Hitler being a great guy. You know, I'm not telling him I'm Jewish at this point.
You're like,
He's like, yo,
you're like-
bro, I'm telling you, I'll give you some podcasts to listen to. And
you're like, stop me at the 7-Eleven. Hey, I gotta see you later. I would just be like,
yeah,
you know. But I'm excited about the movie coming out, man. That's another showing. And do you talk at the theater? Like, do you do a little speech at the beginning or the end? Or?
at the end I do a Q&A.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to cut this part, you can.
I just realized. I wonder if I have to cut that last part because
Why?
What if about the when you did the character of the cab driver? What if somehow the algorithm thinks we're putting a message out there? You know what I mean? I'm like no context,
The
man.
AI just puts a quote under the episode.
Exactly.
Hitler was a great man. Episode
Starring
456.
Danny Lobell. It's like
Yeah.
no. I don't know.
No, I'd say
could-
this.
yeah.
I don't know if you'll want to cut this, but there was a
I could leave that
comedian
in. Should I
who we
leave that
both
in?
know.
Yeah. Okay.
I won't name him.
Well, let's face
because
that way a little bit because
There was a comedian we both know that that I was friendly with and played the improv a lot. And he wound up going on some really anti-Semitic tears.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
On his
yeah.
podcast, and
Yeah.
it kind of broke my heart because he was such a sweet guy, and I really liked him. I always thought he was really insightful, and
Yeah.
and I had him on my podcast at one point, and I really liked the guy, you know. And part of me, like, I still like him, you know, even though I'm hurt by what he's said about Jewish people, and I think it's bad and it's dangerous to do that for the sake of, you know, the safety of my people and myself and my family. But I just thought he was such a wonderful guy, and it always breaks my heart that happened. And like to know somebody,
Yeah.
and then I heard the things he said, and I was really hurt by it, more than I've been hurt by any other anti-Semitism, because I had such great respect for him, you know, comedically and philosophically, and I thought he was really a wonderful guy, and it, you know.
You know what and this isn't on that level at all, but you know what I did the other night, which I think is there was a comedian. It's funny how comedians there's a comedian that I like and admire, but part of me doesn't. I don't know. There's something that irritates me about him, and also like one time and this is so petty, but you know I was on the phone with this guy once for about a half hour, and during the pandemic. And, you know, everyone's lonely and we're talking. And then I go, hey, you know what, man? Would you like to do my podcast? And it's a phone call, you know, because that's what we talked about earlier. And then he just changed 180 on me and was like, I don't do anyone's podcast. You know, he's like, I do the biggest ones. There's no reason to do any of the other ones. But and I don't even want to imitate him right now because if I imitate him, you know who I'm talking about to the audience. But, and then after that, I kind of harbored like for about a year there. I was like, you know what? I thought we were friends. And in my mind, I'm like, but here's what I did the other day. I saw him, and I know, you know, I just kind of, I walked by him and I said like a little prayer, you know, just like and as I touched him, I was like, how you doing? And then it was just like, God bless him, you know, and just to kind of even myself because I don't want to have like, you know, I don't know.
You don't want to have that anger.
Yeah, I don't want to have that. And also, I'm not really angry. I was just more
Or
like
that resentment or whatever it is.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
feeling. I know what you're getting at. I get the feeling, you know, from people like that sometimes too, and like it hurts you because what really they're saying is you're asking me to do your thing. You think you're important enough for me,
right?
To spend time doing this with you?
And I was like, dude, we're already on the phone. Why can't this be a
you know, why would you think that I would lend my greatness to your petty existence?
Yeah.
Right? Look, you know, I don't think, you know, I'm not in a position where I'm getting asked to do millions of podcasts. And maybe if I had more of a career or whatever, notoriety, people would do that, and I'd have to become really selective with the podcast. Personally, I think if it was a friend of mine, I would still do it. I can't imagine doing that with a friend, but you know, I don't know this person or where they were coming from or anything. But where I'm at I very seldomly turn down an opportunity to do a podcast. It happens, but what I realized is like everything's an opportunity, and I'm not so opportunistic. You know, it's not like everything's an opportunity to get ahead, but everything's an opportunity for something. It's an opportunity to learn something. It's an opportunity to become closer with someone. It's an opportunity to say something yourself and be like, oh, I didn't even know I felt that way, or I just came up with that, and maybe I'll write that down later or whatever. You don't know what may come out of it in terms of your own personal development, or it might be super fun, you know? Or you may find you connect with. And actually, here's something interesting. I just emailed this podcast that I really like in New York and asked if I could be on their podcast. And I thought, I may not hear back from them. They're kind of a big podcast.
Yeah.
And they wrote back and they said, oh, yeah, we heard you on this other podcast and you were great. And I thought, oh, they've mistaken me for someone else because I never been on that other podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So then I said, you know, look, I feel embarrassed to say this, but I don't even remember being on that podcast. I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I don't remember. I'm thinking I never was on that podcast. Then I Googled it just to see if I was on that podcast. Yeah. Sure enough, I was on that podcast for over an hour.
Wow.
And I said, oh, okay. Now I remember that. But it was like one of these really little ones.
Yeah.
That, you know, somebody asked me to do it, and I was like, okay, you know, why not? And it was years ago, and I forgot I even ever did it. And now here's this big podcast, and they heard me on that, and they liked me, and now it's opened a door for me to do their podcast. So how about that, you know?
Exactly.
So
I like, especially when it's a phone call podcast. I mean, this isn't even, you know, I mean, here I'm, you know, setting stuff up, but there's a few that I've done where I'm actually enjoy it. Like one, it was so effortless. The guy goes, yeah, you could do it while you're riding your bike. I literally had like AirPods on, and I was riding my bike doing a podcast.
Yeah.
It was great. You know, I've done, you know, where I'm in the car, and there's this one I used to do all the time. Like he goes, hey, are you available for 20 minutes? And then I would, you know, I'd be like, yeah, I want to be in the car anyways, you know, going 2 miles an hour in bumper traffic. Why not? You know?
Yeah.
You know, so.
I like the word podcast. You know, it's a cute word. It's got a cute sound to it.
Yeah.
And you ever hear British people say it? Podcast. Even the way they say it's even cuter. Podcast.
I had a podcast before Pocket Party, and was I had a partner back and we did it for about 3 years, and from 2010 to about 2013. And it reminded me when you said you would tell people, what's a podcast? Like at that time, some people did, some people didn't.
Right.
And I remember this guy, he saw me at Target. And he was this Latino guy. He goes, I love your comedy, man. You know, this is back when I was you're the rooster, man. You're so funny. Where are you going to be playing? You know, where are you going to be performing? And I was like, well, you know, I go, get this. I have a podcast. He goes, what's that? And I'm like, so yeah, everyone has a phone, and then you just go to, see this right here. And I'm trying to walk him through. Right. And then after about the third step, he just glazed over and he's like, oh, okay. All right. You're not going to be like the Laugh Factory or the Ice House or something? I was like, ah, man.
I remember trying to show people how to subscribe to a podcast, and that was like a new thing. And doing that, and like, okay, so this is the app. And
it's easy. It's way easier now, though. Or even YouTube.
Well, people know now. I mean, but people didn't even know that app existed, or they'd have to download it on their phone. Now it comes on the phone.
Now it's Spotify. Just go to Spotify. Because I guess the big ones are Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And then after that, it's who knows. But and that's another thing that's changed since you started. Like, you know, now there's the clips pop up on, you know, TikTok and all this kind of stuff.
It's crazy. It's you know, when I started, there was no, obviously, as we talked about, there was no WTF, there was no Joe Rogan, there was no Adam Carolla podcast. There were I had a foot in the door to be first, and I blew it, and I did everything right, but it wasn't meant to be. But I had all these people came on the show because no one else was asking them to do it, because there was no other podcasts. So I got to have George Carlin come in. Wow. And called in twice as well.
Are your episodes still out there somewhere?
Somewhere. Some of them are. Some of them are gone, which is sad. Like,
I know.
One of my favorite ones that I can't find is one of the first ones I ever did was I interviewed Harvey Pekar of American Splendor, who was like a mentor to me, and he's the reason I make comic books. I'll plug the comic books, folks. Please buy my comic books. it costs a lot to make comic books, so please buy them. I don't make any money. I still never break even, but I like
called
doing
Fair
it.
Enough?
Fair Enough. You go to fairenoughcomic.com. It's a passion. I write comic books about my life. They're all true stories in the vein of what Harvey Pekar used to do on American Splendor. So without getting into the whole story of it, Harvey Pekar became a friend. He became a mentor. He encouraged me. He told me to go for it in life when I really had no confidence. And he was one of the first people I ever interviewed. And I don't have that interview, and I wish I had it. And I would love to go back and listen to my voice cracking with nervousness and talking to him. And he's dead now. So I wish I could find that recording of me and Harvey Pekar.
Wow.
But some of them are up there,
Good luck on Wednesday. I'm gonna get this out there. I'll tweet it. I'll help you out any way I can. And what would be interesting, if you would like. No one's ever said a prayer on the podcast. You want to do one on our way out? Would that work or no?
I could do it. But I won't do it like a Hebrew prayer.
Or it could be in English.
But Well, let me think about that. It's an interesting request. I like it. I went to see Don Rickles in concert.
Yeah.
And he ended his shows with blessing the audience.
Wow.
I thought that was really amazing.
How did he do it? Do you remember what he said? Or
he said something like, I want to thank God for this opportunity and may God bless and keep every one of you and then if you watch old clips of him, you could see him do that sometimes. Where he would do that, he would bring God into
look at that.
His outro at the end of his shows.
Yeah.
He would
I've been ending my set with God bless everyone, have a great usually up, positive.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there can be negative energy, and then
right.
you know how these algorithms, they show people fighting, people this, and it's like, and I'm like, that's when I started the podcast 5 years ago, this one, I wanted to, find, kind of like add the light to the world, and I would find little motivational quotes and throw that in there places.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
I think I need to circle back and bring that back in, a little bit, because I do, but I don't. I mean, there used to be a time where I'd start the show out with, "Hey, here's something," and then my favorite, Socrates quote or whatever, and so I thought that'd be interesting because you're a spiritual guy, very positive guy, loving guy, and.
Thank you.
It just hit me right now.
I like being described that way. It's nice.
You're like, tell my wife the next time we get into an argument. No. Hey, it's because of loving.
Yeah. As if that's the only side to me, but that's great. That's the side you want people to know about. Not that I've got some real dark side, but that I'm aware of. But we're all human. But that's nice to be thought of that way. I feel like that's an accomplishment for me. But I would say that too. That whoever's listening to this, God bless you, and you should be healthy, and you should be mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially healthy. And you should always have positivity in your life. You should, because it's so easy to get dragged into negativity. I'm a guy who went through real depression at certain points in my life, and like really bad, like clinical depression, medicated for it, and all that fun stuff. And being depressed is one of the worst places you can be, because you could be anywhere and that place is depressing. If you're depressed, it travels with you. So you could go to Aruba, and it wouldn't be Aruba, it would be depression land. You could go anywhere and it would be depression, because you live in the depression, you don't live in the world. So I don't know if this is like a hybrid prayer / my advice. I don't know, but
no, I get it.
But just as someone who
I love it,
who really suffered from depression and had to claw my way out of it, and that's really how you have to be. Like, there are days that you just have to, when you're depressed, there are days that you have to just go through the motions of life as if you're not depressed, just to pull your way out of it. And there are things you could do. I'm not a therapist, and I'm not a doctor or anything to help you, but what I'll tell you is, obviously you need to get good sleep. That's the very first thing. And you should change your diet, and you should get rid of processed foods as much as possible. But on a spiritual level, connect to God and connect to appreciation, because the remedy that I found for depression is appreciation. And if you appreciate life and you appreciate all the things you have, and anytime you catch yourself slipping into what you don't have and feeling sorry that you don't have this or that, for me, still, like, I rent this house, and it's, I've been renting it for a decade, and it's never I never solidly feel like I'm here, because I could always be out. The landlord at any point is always threatening that he wants to knock the property down and build on it, and it makes me feel very uneasy. And I wish I could buy a house, but I don't have enough money for a down payment, and sometimes that kind of gets to me. And you just remember to refocus.
Yeah,
that's just one example.
And
but
have
I'm
that,
just
like you said,
trying
an
to make it
attitude of
relatable.
gratitude.
Yeah, an attitude of gratitude. Just remember, why am I thinking about what I don't have? Think about what I do have. You can always aspire to have what you don't have, and you can work towards it, but don't obsess over it. Don't start feeling sorry for yourself that you don't have it, and start feeling victimized, and don't just be grateful for all the beautiful things in your life. Be grateful. You could start just by the fact that you're breathing. And then, if you have sight, if you're blessed with sight, you could think about that. And then, taste or whatever, you go through the senses. And then, if you have shoes, when you start thinking about it, you go, oh my God, I have so much. And you say, you be grateful to God, and be grateful to your family, and be happy to be alive. And as I said that, a nice breeze just went over us. Be grateful for those breezes. That's a gift from God. Every little nice feeling that you have, anything you experience, from a breeze to a sandwich to whatever it is, that's a beautiful thing, and you're getting to have that, and you're getting to experience that, the sunshine, and whatever it is, just live in gratitude, and you'll be a happy person. And if you're happy inside, then wherever you are is a good place to be.
Amen.
That's what I think.
Amen.
So, anyway.
That was good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That was whatever came out when you asked me to tell him to do a prayer.
This guy's great. I could just lob a question. You could rock this podcast. This is exactly what we wanted to hear.
And then we think the mic is off. This is all shit.
That wind, it's blowing me. My shoes are too
tight.
Why
did I agree to do this? I said I only do the big podcasts.
I know. He was not the guy I was talking about, and I've already forgiven the guy. That was awesome, Danny.
Who put me on this?
Yeah. All right, man. Hey, you guys, this is Danny Lobell. Check him out. He's everywhere. His comic book, his movie, his old episodes, and he puts up podcasts every now and then.
Every now and then, whenever I feel like I've got it together, enough to do that. But the fairenoughcomic.com is where you could get. It's just called fairenoughcomic.com is where you can get the comic books, and the movie is called Reconquistador.com is the website, and it's playing Wednesday, the 26th of April. Yeah, that's right. At the Laemmle Theater in Encino, California at 7:30 p.m. Thank you.
Yeah. On behalf of my guest, Danny Lobell, I'm Darren Carter. Thank you so much for watching the Pocket Party podcast. Like and review and share it. Thank you.
On behalf of myself, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye. Hey, that was
Who
great.
put me on this?
Keep going. Keep going. That camera's rolling. That
was fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was awesome.
It almost gets to like a Gilbert Gottfried pitch. Who booked me on this? Why am I doing this? I can't believe it.
Everybody listen to Darren Carter. We all know he's the party starter. So if you want to listen to a podcast for free, then listen to the Pocket Party.